Morning everybody, Joe here from Price.tag Aquariums, and I thought I'd show you around here in the fish room or in the basement before I start feeding everybody. Let's get started.
So at the beginning of my fish room is my peacock breeder tank. That is a female red shoulder that's currently holding, as you can see, a female dragon blood, and the male stud OB peacock, living with 4 females in his house. So he's a lucky guy. And then that is a female lemon jake. But everyone's doing well and really can't complain too much. Plenty of fry to be seen in the future, which is always exciting. That is the female OB and of course the female dragon blood again. But this male OB has really colored up nicely, so that's always a good thing. Up next is my hat breeder tank. That one you see there is called a Walteri, and it's a little bit young yet, so I feel like I need to give it just a little bit more time for it to start breeding. But the rest of the fish are doing good. And that one there is a female sulfurhead lithobates, followed by the Insignis protomelis and the Venusis right there you see, the giraffe cichlid. And lastly, the electric blue Ali right here. We've had about 4 come from her, but I gotta give a little bit of time yet for the Walteri to grow up, and I think we'll be okay. And here's one of my favorite tanks in the entire fish room, is my in-wall tank setup where all my Mbuna are at. And this tank has come a long way from day one, but ever since I moved it down here and I started doing live streams, these guys get more and more outgoing as time goes on. And I'm just really loving the way this tank has looked, the way the fish has colored up, and I don't have a single issue with this tank. They do their thing, and I feed them on a regular basis, and everything's just been great, so I can't complain. And my second in-wall tank setup is some of my newest fish, and I finally had this tank settled down to where everyone's getting along. You might have a little chase here and there, but it's nothing that's a target or anything like that. There's no fin damage, there's no one bullying anybody in particular, and everyone's eating, everyone's swimming around, doing their thing. They're growing as we speak, so it's been really healthy, and really have not much to complain about now because I'm finally getting things to where they're working out in here. So my Pleco, he's finally coming out a little bit more, and he's actually grown up a little bit too. And it's been, what, a couple months now, I think? So I'm really looking forward to watching these fish grow up and really take shape. Moving right along to my Molly tank, and this is always entertaining to watch every time I come to the fish room. This is probably the most entertainment that you get out of a community tank fish, because they're just always so friendly, so active, following my hand around, and even if you put your hand in the water, they'll kind of nibble on your hand. I mean, they're probably just because they think they're hungry all the time, but regardless, it's a very friendly atmosphere walking in front of this tank. And as you can see here, they're still making babies. So, and they're not really hurting them either. You might have like a few that may not make it, but for the most part, a couple small ones here and there keep showing up. And as long as they keep showing up, I'll have mollies in my fish room every day, all the time. And they all get along, which is great. And below the molly tank is my 3 Geophagus redhead Tapajos, which actually have a different scientific name now, but I did have 4. I did unfortunately lose one, but these ones have been healthy ever since and are eating well, and they're still within their 30-day quarantine period, but they're almost through, but they're doing really well. I'm actually planning on putting these guys in my second in-wall tank setup. I'll show you guys a picture here of what these guys look like full grown. And their head and their back fans are just absolutely stunning in my opinion. So that's the reason why I got them. And this is what I like to call my dragon cage, which is full of dragon blood peacocks. and that's what they could potentially look like as a male full grown. But this tank is so cool because you can walk all the way around it. It's in the center of the room, and this is actually one of my wife and daughter's favorite tanks to feed, because you can set the food in your hands and they swish their hand around, and it's almost like they eat the food right off their hands, and it's very entertaining for them both. So there you go. Now this is where all the magic happens. This is where I keep all my egg tumblers, and this is where all the fry end up when I move them from the egg tumblers, so I don't have to carry them anywhere, and I release them right into the tank. And these are currently OBs. That's the male that you saw earlier and the female of what these fry are. So it's very neat to see eggs being tumbled, growing out, and then released into this tank, and then eventually put into their own tank for further processing. So these are my two 40-gallon breeders, and I'm currently holding what you see here, the Yellow Labs and ACI Yellowtail. I still have about 10 Yellowtail left from my previous incident, so that's still good. I'm hoping to breed more of them as I go along, but they're really active, and I'm probably going to add some more Yellow Labs in here, but I eventually want to make this into a breeding tank for the ACI Yellowtail. Below that tank is all of my sulfur head lithobates, and I'll show you guys a picture of what they look like full grown. But that is actually a picture of one of my current fish in my upstairs peacock and hat tank. But I really love the coloration of these fish, and I think it's just because I really like the Mbuna ACI Yellowtail, so this would be like another version of them in a hat form. And up next is my 20-gallon long rack, and I'll leave a card up in the corner for you guys if you're interested in building one of these yourself. But what's in this first tank are red shoulder peacocks, and that would be what they would look like potentially as a full-grown male. But these guys are happy, they're healthy. I haven't had a single death in this tank yet, knock on wood, and they keep growing. And there's even more where that came from, because here's some more of them. These guys are probably about a couple months old, so they're pretty new. The other guys on the left were probably a few months old, maybe 3-4 months old. But everyone's doing well, eating healthy, and still growing. Alright, so moving right along, what I have in this tank are mostly lemon jakes, and that's what they could potentially look like full grown as a male. But there are a few red shoulders in here, and I just got them mixed up by accident because it's easy to do when you have a bunch of fish in your fish room. On this tank here is roughly 30 OBs, and I've had them since about mid-January, and you can obviously tell that that one in the center is the most dominant male out of all of them because the other ones aren't as colorful. But I've already gotten a couple holding females at about 8 months old that you'll see later on in the video. But it just amazes me, being this young at age, that they're still able to hold a little fry in their mouth. And here's my second to last 20-gallon long with lemon jakes in here. Not much to talk about since I've already shown you pictures and discussed a little bit briefly about them, but they're doing really well, probably about 3-4 months old, and no fish deaths. So here we have, like I said before, more red shoulders. I feel like I have more red shoulders, dragon blood, and lemon jakes than I can count, but it's been very entertaining to watch, and it's really neat to see them so active in front of the tank. So onward to my 10-gallon rack. I'll leave a card in the corner for this as well on how to build this. But beginning with my top left tank, I actually have a fish in quarantine. It's one of the fire mouse that has a swim bladder issue. It's really hard to tell and really hard to see in here, but he just has a lot of trouble swimming, so I'm trying to take care of him the best I can. And over to the next tank is more OB fry I've had since August 10th. So they've been doing well. I've been feeding them the powder food that you just shake in a small little cup with water, and they're doing just fine. So hopefully they grow out to look just as colorful as that male OB from the breeder tank. This one, like I said earlier, is one of the holding female OBs because one, it wasn't eating, and two, It's a little hard to tell yet, but it is actually holding a little bit. So we gotta wait patiently for it to release a few fry. But shockingly enough, I'll show you another OB that was holding that actually had its fry. So look forward to that here in the future. No fry in this one yet. You keep doing what you're doing, girl. You're doing just fine. So, moving right along to the tank below this, I have a bunch of albino dragon bloods, and there's 4 other fish here I'll mention here in a second. But albino dragon bloods, they look like this, full-grown male, and I really hope some of mine turn out that way. But the other 4 are the electric blue eyelid that I was talking about earlier, of that female that I was able to get 4 out of. So I just put them in this tank for now, and they're doing just fine. And next to that one, wouldn't you know it, more OBs. They're probably about a few months old now. I've been feeding them flakes for a little bit, and they're doing just fine. And next to those guys, I actually have a couple tanks of yellow labs. These guys are a little bit more timid than what's in the 40-gallon breeder, as you can tell. But this is what I was talking about earlier, that I hopefully will be adding more yellow labs from that tank and this tank as well to that 40 breeder. And then we'll see where we go to from there. But plenty of room for expansion. So here's my other albino dragon bloods. Now these guys, you can tell how like the colors are so different on these guys. And I really hope that some of these are gonna look really, really neat. And they're a few months older than the other ones, so I'll probably combine them at some point. But this is the other OB that eventually had her fry, and there's about 4 of them in here. As you can see that it started eating when I started putting flakes, and this was like day 1 of when I realized that the fry were done and that she was eating. So that was my first, sort of idea that, oh, let me look for the fry. And if you guys look closely, you can't really count them, but I did count about 4 that she was holding. So if you look closely, you can see them moving around in there. But I did end up returning her back to the original tank, and I'm currently feeding these fry on their own, and then I'll eventually put them in with the others as I get a little bit bigger. But soon enough, I'll have all the OBs in one tank, so that way they're all together. And wait a minute, if you stay tuned to the end of the video, you might actually see that tank. So moving swiftly over to my bigger tanks, this is a 60-gallon breeder on top, full of mixture of lemon jakes, and which also has Insignis protomelis, and it's the only time I've ever had those. And it also has a few ruby red peacocks that I got from Ohio Cichlid Association, which might be some of those little orangish red ones you see there up front. But this tank is quite the mixture, and I just decided to leave it that way because I wasn't going to try to separate them. And like I said earlier, when you have this many fish, sometimes it's easy to do. Below that one is the Kenny eyes, and the males are definitely staying that burnt orange yellow color, but everyone's doing well. I really don't have a whole lot of issues with this tank either. And these guys are grown, they're probably at least a couple inches or so now, so they're doing good. And of course, my golden mbunas, they are always active and swimming around, and they're still growing, so they've been a really fun fish to feed because they're always just all over the place, and they don't ever let a single pellet drop to the floor, or flake for that matter. But it's fun. And then above that is another 60-gallon breeder with a bunch of lemon jakes, and lemon jakes only. I made sure of that. So I just keep letting these guys grow out in this tank and leave it be. Easy enough. And last but not least, oh, remember I talked about those OBs? Look what I have down below. Anyways, here's my last set of dragon bloods. And these guys are probably about 6 months old, but they're starting to get some of their nice little spots and fins on them, and they're starting to look really nice, and they're really, really healthy. So that concludes the tour of how all of my fish are doing in each and every one of my tanks. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I did creating it for you, and I really hope that you guys keep watching my channel and enjoying my content.
Alright, that's all I got for you guys. Hope you guys have a terrific day, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.